Pavel and Yana are glowing. You blink your eyes, but nothing changes. They just stand there, glowing.
Stonebound.
Welcome back. What you just heard was some incredibly well written and delivered dialogue for a narrative game from Sky Kingdom Games. This one is called the Isofarian Guard, which is a 1 to 2 player cooperative game that takes place in the Stonebound universe.
Yeah, this is just one portion of the Teleos world that they've created for the Stonebound universe in Isofar, which is represented by this enormous map. And like Jeremy said, this is 1 to 2 player game, and this is just a small portion of what's going to come in this box.
Let's first talk about that 1 to 2 player aspect. You will be playing either solo or with a friend, trying to go through one of 4 different campaigns. Each of these different campaigns is going to revolve around 2 of the heroes in the Isofarian Guard, with each of the campaigns being 4 in total, representing those 2 characters. You're going to be going on quests and trying to level up your characters in order to get to the end of the storyline, in which you'll be using a new set of heroes to do it all over again.
Yeah, the Guard is made up of a number of people, and we're going to try to avoid spoiling too much. We did get a chance to take a demo of this a little bit, just from the very beginning of this game, but this game is going to span several campaigns, like we just said, and up to maybe 50 plus hours if you go all the way through.
So as we said, it's a 1 to 2 player game, but what you heard prior to us talking about it was the narrative and the orchestra behind the game. They've spent a lot of time making sure that this game has a strong narrative aspect to it. Each of these different locations that has a scroll on it is going to have some narrative elements in it, as well as its own particular mini-map. So the moment that you go to Silny, you're going to actually be venturing in Silny itself, which is going to have a number of different locations, but also a narrative soundtrack that's going to walk you through all those character interactions.
Yeah, and before we go any further, let's just put a general descriptor on this. This game is going to sort of recreate things like the video game Skyrim or old video game RPGs in a tabletop fashion. Like Jeremy just said, you're going to go to a city, and then a number of those locations are going to have a zoomed-in board with locations in and among it that you can travel and use as well. You're going to be crafting items, you're going to be visiting blacksmiths, and you're going to be following a narrative with a really interesting system. This foreteller app that is optional, by the way, is going to have all of that narration and orchestrated music, but it's also going to help tell you when you're going to put a narration token down on the board, knowing that that's going to be the next place to sort of move the story along. Now, with that said, it's a sandbox as well, and you can travel and do just about anything you want to, and the game is going to scale a little bit for that.
Yes, so going back to that narrative portion, it's also going to have multiple branching paths in it too. So the decisions that you make after listening to that dialogue is going to change your storyline for the rest of that campaign.
Yeah, we actually did get to experience one of those decision points right at the end of our demo, which was a great sort of cliffhanger, where we can do one thing or the other. There was something really laid right at our feet, right towards the beginning of the game, and he then described how this would take us potentially to a similar spot down the narrative, but through very, very different paths.
And if you don't want to use the foreteller app, you can also do all of the reading just through the campaign guide itself. So it's up to you on how you want to control that narrative portion of the game. So we already mentioned that it is both a 1 to 2 player game and has a heavy narrative aspect to it. But how are you actually playing the game? Well, it is a bag building game in which you're going to be using chips to enact the different skills that you have as one of the 2 players.
Yeah, the players in the game are going to have a bag of chips that represent some of their attributes, or enhancements rather, to their base attributes. And you're going to be pulling those out of the bag during encounters, during fights, things like that. There's also, though, a bag of chips 1 through 6 that's going to have an impact on what might happen at any one of these tons and tons of nodes all over the board, because you're going to go to a location, and then you're going to discover what's happening there by pulling a chip, using a chart in the book or the foreteller app to determine what you're going to encounter. It might be 1 Timberwolf, it might be 2 Timberwolves, it might be a side quest, all sorts of different things, really giving every play of this game a very different flavor.
And you're going to be using those chips themselves to place on one of the different skill cards that you have built specifically to your character. Each of these skill cards is going to enact you to do some kind of combat abilities within the game. And the combat that you're doing is going to be against one of many different monsters that are represented by not only a creature, but an AI deck that's going to power his own abilities. And as you progressively go through the game, you're going to learn more about each of these different creatures and the powers that they do have.
Yeah, there are some things we learned about these creatures that we absolutely can't share, but there's some really cool things that are going to happen in this game, not to mention the fact that the game is going to, like I said earlier, scale with you. So if you get further and further away, you're going to recognize that some of these Timberwolves might be stronger Timberwolves. Depending on how far you've progressed, things are going to happen like that, just as they would in any sort of RPG and video game style.
And speaking of the RPG video game style, you're also going to have a progressive upgrade track that you can use for each of the characters. As you get stronger and get more experience in the game, you're going to be upgrading your character, which is going to upgrade your skills, which is going to upgrade your chips, and so forth. So that is the Isofarian Guard. It is a 1 to 2 player cooperative narrative-driven game from Sky Kingdom Games. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.